What's up, guys? Just the other day I posted a video about a Slick Rick record featuring cannabis or not featuring cannabis, depending on which version you had, and how the version not featuring cannabis is definitively superior. And like literally the day after that, or even maybe less than 24 hours after that, video surfaces of this big battle he's in, where he just, I don't want to be too cruel about it, but sort of laughingstock of the internet where, like, just everything goes wrong. I mean, his verses kind of suck. He's reading from a notebook at a battle, and I mean, admittedly, they're supposed to be written, but nobody else is actually reading them out of notebooks, so they're memorized. And he's losing his place, and he's stopping to scream at the audience for not liking his lyrics and stuff, and he's gonna walk out and all this stuff. And so it was just really bad for him. And that happened right on the tails of me making a video where I'm like, hey, what's better than a Slick Rick record featuring cannabis? A Slick Rick record not featuring cannabis, you know? So, and he's already had, I mean, he's already, the whole instance with J. Cole, the whole thing with dissing Premiere and sort of apologizing for it even within the context of the Premiere track, because, he wants to work with them and all that kind of awkward funniness. So, and I feel bad about it because I have genuinely been a pretty big cannabis fan. I mean, I had a cannabis web page on the internet way back at the very beginning before he had an album out. I mean, there was certainly that time when everybody was huge on cannabis, and he certainly, even to this day, where perhaps his stock isn't as high as it once was. You can't deny that he's got a real, his own lane he's really pretty good at. And he's got a style that he's really mastered, and he comes up with some pretty clever, inventive rhymes. So I wanted to make this video just to say something nice about cannabis and maybe sort of offset everything that's going on. So if you want to see something nice about cannabis, there's a lot of places you can go. I mean, you can go to something like Boys to Men, which I think is a really underrated track with him clearly helping out A pluses on the lyrical end, or Beast from the East, again, where he really steals the show and really made a name for himself. I mean, he's more famous naturally for his whole shenanigans with LL Cool J, but Beast from the East, where he comes in from that final verse and steals the scene and just rocks on way longer than anybody else, all that, is really where he made a name for himself, I think, to, the heads. And the people are really appreciating the artistry of hip-hop as opposed to maybe more the celebrity gossip of the, I'm going to bigger with LL Cool J and Eminem and all that kind of nonsense. So there's that kind of stuff. And then I thought, no, what I should really do is go back to some of the more rare, best, earliest vinyl. Like his earliest single, blah blah blah, Niggas We Roll With, and how that became How We Roll on this really very cool, like if you have only one cannabis record in your collection, this should probably be it, the special limited edition, that's the whole title, which features How We Roll, but also pretty much all of his killer freestyles from back in the day. DJ Clue, Tony Touch, one says the Lost Boys freestyle, that's just another DJ Clue freestyle. And it features also, interestingly, all of them in clean versions, the freestyles and everything. And so for a hot minute, that's what this video was going to be about. And I'm just going to talk about that track. But really, I sort of felt like I actually didn't have that much to say about it. It's a good song. It features Panama P.I. on the hook, even though he's not credited in most releases. And the main thing about it is that it's longer on the 12-inch. It's longer on this 12-inch. It's longer on this 12-inch. It's even longer on these official, more fancy second-round KO 12-inch. But if you actually have the album, it's truncated, it's shorter. And basically, if you know the song, it starts out with the beat in slow motion, like dun, 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 and then it speeds up and Canvas raps to it, and it's a pretty hype song. And at the end, on the longer versions, the beat slows back down again and the DJ cuts it up. And on the album version, it just sort of ends as soon as P.I. finishes the song. It just boop, cuts off. So there's that. But really, at the end of the day, then, I feel like that's it. I've just told you everything there is to know about all versions of How We Roll or Niggas We Roll With. And, this is cool as a collector's item. You say, oh, very first cannabis, but it doesn't really make for a whole video. So I wanted to go somewhere a little more interesting, maybe a little more novel. So I figured I had to go back to the cannabis vaults and find something a little more interesting. But interesting actually is a little bit tricky when you come to cannabis vinyl because, I mean, he's got all these promo singles off his first two albums and all, but they're all pretty generic. There's nothing there but album tracks and, clean and instrumental and dirty versions. So, and he's got then these sort of generic white labels like this and Uncut Raw. And there's this, the H is gold, what is it? HIV is gold and AIDS is platinum, which is interesting and novel, but it's whack, which really just kind of flies in the face of what I set out to do in the first place. So it's a little bit tricky. So I eventually settled on something I think very rare, which is perhaps the most, and the song I genuinely like, is this promo single. This is a single I actually get a lot of flack for. I mean, look at this. It's just handwritten. But once you open up, you can see it's actually a legitimately pressed cassette with, official printed information from Universal Records. I get flack for this because I've had this on my discography for years, and, these days I don't really hear about it anymore because the time of, cannabis obsession and collection has sort of passed. But back in the days when everyone was sort of freaking out and trying to get their hands on everything cannabis, I was really the only source of information about this on the internet, and people frankly were challenging me that it just did not exist. It's a single for Neganometry. This is a good topic, because right away when you think of cannabis and math, a lot of fun stuff comes up. I mean, just like that classic song with Common on his third album, where they have that famous, tragically incorrect line about, where your worst nightmare squared, and that's double for all you ain't mathematically aware, which of course is really basically not true, but you can actually, I've spent way too much of my time of my youth pondering those lyrics, and you can sort of justify it, because obviously doubling a number and squaring a number is not the same thing. But, and if you say your worst nightmare is 1, and your first nightmare doubled would be 2, but your first nightmare squared would still be 1, because 1 times 1 equals 1, because that's the difference. Doubling is something times 2, and squared is something times itself. But they say where your worst nightmare squared, right? There's 2 of them. So 2 of them doubled would be 4. 2 of them squared would be 4, because 2 times 2 equals 4, either way. So, I mean, that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense and really doesn't mean anything, but at least there's a way you can say it's not totally incorrect. So I just had to throw that in there because really, that was what I did in high school as opposed to learning real subjects. And this song is just as much fun as any of that. First of all, the beat is really nice. It's kind of very subtle and understated, but sort of smooth. And unlike a lot of the more Wyclef-y stuff on that first album, it's more of a pure hip-hop track. It's produced by LG Experience, not to be confused with LG, the teacher, Lawrence Goodman, who did all the Steady B kind of stuff and pop art. This is LG who did like One Love for Nas and stuff with like the Boogie Monsters and Ill and Al Scratch, and also he's pretty dope. He's got a DJ cutting up letters for the hook to spell out N-I-G-G-A nometry, so it's got a fun chorus, and it's got Canibus kicking really crazy, ridiculous math raps. What's not to love? So the premise, even though it's not explicitly said in the song, is that while you've got your sort of traditional classical math that they teach you in school, Canibus is going to tell you the real street math that you need to know. This is the stuff for the heads, and, and also in a very sort of silly, fun way. And it starts out with sort of a very dirty word problem about oral sex, and the answer to that, by the way, is 7. But then he kind of flips it around, so it starts out, sort of a very kind of easier way into the song, but then he starts flipping around. He uses it as an excuse to talk about the industry and the way labels screw over people, and there's a weird little bit in there about getting drunk and needing a designated driver, which really has just a very tenuous connection to math. And it eventually ends with just a very silly bit of nonsense which rivals anything about Worst Nightmare Squared. He starts off with a brief explanation of, Archimedes' principle and water displacements, and uses that to explain how the Earth isn't really 3/4 water, because if you take out all of the sea creatures and presumably sunken ships and treasure, and whatever else is underneath the oceans, out, then the volume of the water level would come down a bit, and therefore it's a lie when they say that the Earth is really 3/4 water. But that's based on basically a total misunderstanding. First of all, nobody says the entire planet is made solidly of 3/4 water. They say the Earth's surface is 3/4 water. It's mostly, rock and stuff underneath. Although maybe you could say there's a lot of water in the Earth's core, but whatever. He's misquoting and misunderstanding the whole basic premise that he's arguing against. And even so, people say, the Earth is roughly 3/4 water. Not exactly. So if you're taking out a bunch of whales and you make it down to, one minute fraction less, he hasn't totally disproven the theory. Nobody's saying 3/4 is an exact science. So the whole thing is just really silly and ridiculous. And he just says it so seriously. So the Earth isn't really 3/4 water. The Earth isn't really 3/4 water. He says it twice like that. And then, doing his own backup ad-libs, he goes, that was deep, to himself. So the whole thing is just a blast. It's very silly. It's a lot of fun. And Just as fun, then, is what the DJ adds at the end, where he takes a total out-of-left-field shot at LL Cool J. But, you know, sort of making fun of his rhymes there. But it really is a good song on a lot of levels. I mean, I do like the production, and really, you know, maybe this is giving him slightly too much credit, but I don't think he really intends for you to take his rhymes all that seriously. I think even though he has this very earnest, hardcore kind of delivery, he knows it's very silly, and that's sort of the joke. You know, I hope he's in on the joke anyway. So all in all, and even if he's not, it doesn't make the song any less fun. And one reason why heads were interested in the single for this and looking for it and expecting a single for this is that they shot a video for it. And for the video, they made a whole new version of the song, a clean version, called Negronometry, because that's, you know, obviously much more politically correct to say, and that's something you can say on television. And that's a lot of fun, because one thing is they completely change up the hook. You know, the letters he's cutting up, obviously now they cut it up to N-E-G-R-O, so they actually took the time to redo the song, although unfortunately they didn't take the time to also redo the lyrics. So while they make a whole new hook, which is fun and makes this for a cool alternate version, his lyrics are just all silenced and cut up, and especially in the beginning, you know, when he's talking about sex, that takes a lot out of the song and really does just sort of spoil the song. It's too bad there does not exist anywhere a dirty version of Negronometry, because that would be a fun, really workable alternate version of the song. And the video is a blast too. I mean, it certainly goes a long way towards supporting the claim that Canibus is indeed in on the silly novelty of the song. Because in the video, he comes out as a little tiny painted silver green screen sort of rapping statuette on a teacher's desk. No lie. I've actually queued this up on YouTube, so you here. And so I'm happy to be able to say that, yes, there is at least some vague sort of single for it. There's at least this weird little promo cassette, which just features the one song on both sides. Unfortunately, does not include the Negronometry version. And really, musically, it's nothing to kill yourself hunting for. It's no different than what's on the album. But it is kind of cool just to know that the single's out there, and the song's a lot of fun. And so, I don't know if I've really succeeded 100% in saying really good things about Canibus, because maybe I sort of had a little too much fun with his rhymes. But I really do genuinely enjoy this single. I think it's dope. I think it's dope not despite him or anything like that. I think he's having fun with it and the fun comes across, and I think it really works on pretty much all levels. So I recommend the song, even if you don't get the rare single, even if you just get on the album, which has some other good moments too, second round K-Out of course. So there you have it. Something positive about Canibus to counterbalance all the unfortunate stuff we're hearing about him these days. Remember that he definitely does have something to offer, and he definitely came with some really strong records, and so let's not forget that. So until next time, this is Where Von Wallenrod, and peace out.